We need to get you one of those things that say, the clappers. I think, what did we're live. I know. I'm trying to think what the clackers are called. Hey,
I'll look that up for you.
This is my hosting week, so we're almost certainly just going to be a mess. I'm Jess Knott from Michigan State University and the Women Who Whine. And as per usual, I'll hand it over to introduce my friends. But I believe we usually introduce our wine at this time too. And I found wine in a can this week. Really proud of myself. It's at the World Market, Lila Pinot Grigio. Pretty excited about it. Tanya?
What's the World Market?
World Market is a store. I don't know if they go beyond the Midwest.
Plus, we have them.
Cost Plus World Market. Yeah, they've got great wine. It's super cheap, and you can join a wine club.
Oh,
and
I don't know if we have that here.
Oh, man, you join the wine club, they just roll barrels to your house. It's great.
Wow. I need to find that. I'm Tanya Dustin. I'm from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. I'm not mixing it up today. So I'm doing the same old Boda box. These have been in my house for like months now. I think about 3 months. I'm probably going to have to switch it up for the winter. Today I'm doing the Cabernet Sauvignon. I go between this and the Red Volution, it's called. I tried some of the other ones. I didn't care for them. But, it's very interesting. I went to the grocery store yesterday to pick one up. And, and by the way, I should mention there are 3 liters in here, which is equivalent to 4 bottles of wine in this one box. It's easy to recycle. You don't have to carry clanking bottles. It has a handle on top, so you could just grab it and walk out the store with it. You don't even need a bag. It's so awesome.
It's also easy to not know there are 4 bottles in there when you're camping. Hypothetically, maybe you can't find the bathroom at midnight. Just
I should mention, though, I don't know if you guys know this. So I went to the grocery store and I got confused because there was another box wine that looked just like this on sale, and I almost bought it, but it's called the Black Box. So there's the Boda box, and now there's the Black Box, and the Black Box was $2 cheaper. And you guys know how I love, a deal. But I was like, not risking it. I just wasn't really risky. The Black Box is good?
Yeah, it is good.
Yeah, maybe I'll try that. Maybe I'll try one this weekend or tomorrow.
Awesome. Well, I'm Nori Barajas Murphy, and I am the Director of Grant Projects for the Online Learning Consortium. Today, I also am drinking a boxed wine, and like Tanya's, my boxed wine is in fact 4 complete bottles. No lie. She didn't mention the spigot. Right? Wine that's fun. And then just to backtrack a little bit, that clapper thing is called the clapper board. And Tanya, there's a Cost Plus in Wisconsin at 625 Main Street. It's open till 9 o'clock tonight. Just saying.
There's no Main Street in Milwaukee. What city is that?
It's showing Cost Plus, Milwaukee. And
if anybody who knows me knows I have a problem leaving the east side of Milwaukee. I have about a 5-mile radius before I melt and disintegrate.
It actually looks like
a drone or something.
There are 3 Cost Pluses in the Milwaukee area.
Okay, I'll have to look them up.
Yeah, things are looking good for you. And the Black Box wine has actually won some awards.
I will put links to Cost Plus in the document for y'all to follow along with.
Nice.
So, Patrice, you're up next.
Patrice Presco. I'm an instructional designer at Cornell University. And for people that tuned in last week, I was drinking a wine from Washington in celebration to my daughter, who is out in Washington State University. And this wine is actually from the same vineyard. And hang on, I have to pull the description up. And what I really love about it is the label and the name. It is called the Funkadelic Syrah, and it is a fresh and vibrant wrapping rose petal and violet notes around a bracing core of black cherry and black olive flavors, pushing aside a veil of fine tannins to persist disarmingly. I think that should be our motto, and it's a great way to amplify yourself.
I'm definitely looking for what mine tastes like, and all I can figure out is can. Gluten-free, low-carb, low-calorie. This was a bad idea. I might be getting up and going to my refrigerator because this is BS. Laura.
I think the important thing is alcohol content. So, really let's prioritize here.
12.5.
I get props to all your boxes there, by the way. That your wine boxes are good for festivals, especially when you can bring your own in, like jazz festivals, music festivals. It's good for a few days or an afternoon with friends on a beach blanket. I think that's great.
Have you ever seen the size of my purse?
Yes, that's why I thought of you.
Keep it in there.
Outing somewhere in the park. I put hiking, cycling. I think boxes like at home they have lots of they look like big juice boxes because they're meant for that sort of thing. So cans are great. Boxes are great. Way to be environmental friendly, ladies.
Boxes are also really easy to empty into a Camelback for hiking, for example. So I'll also put that in the document.
I just got a new Camelback. That's good. I'm gonna put water in that though. Hydration is important too. I picked a wine. I didn't go to World Market, although it's one of my favorites. Good find there, Jess. I actually went to the Costco because we like good deals. So they've got some good 90 point and above wines, and I picked up one to take back the word Jezebel. It is a Pinot Noir from Oregon, and I picked Jezebel because a good colleague of mine that's up in Toronto, she's a faculty member in English, she posted a really interesting article about the politics of pockets. And those who know me know that I love a good dress with pockets because you can put stuff in them because everyone else took pockets away, and that was really political. So I'm taking back my pockets and I'm giving some Jezebel today. And I like it because it has a deep berry notes with a hint of spice. And I think that's us. We're all a little spicy. And I'm okay with having morally outspoken, brazen women around my circle. That's why you're all my friends.
We are nothing if not brazen. Yeah. Okay, so that's our wine. If you've been following along on Twitter or on the blog, you'll see that today we're going to talk about elevating elephant. No, I'm not even drunk yet. Okay, so elevating and amplifying women voices, female voices in the workplace and beyond. So recently, this past week on Twitter, a story was going around in several places that talked about how senior women in Obama's cabinet made themselves heard in meetings where they were talked over or just not maybe listened to as well as they could be. And one of those ways they did that was in the meeting when a woman would say something, the other women in the room would repeat it. So I don't know about you, but I've been in meetings where I'll have an idea, I'll say something, and it's just like in the Lego movie when all Emmett wants to do is build a submarine, and everybody's like, that's dumb, and then Batman says, let's build a submarine, and everybody's like, yay, Batman, you're great. It's the same thing. Like, hey, I've got this idea. And then by the end of the meeting, some dude has credit for what you were saying. So the women in these situations were repeating each other and really kind of trying to draw it back to where it had sort of originated, so that by the end it was like, great idea, Sarah. We put it out on Twitter, and there was a lot of interesting conversation that happened, including one of my directors at MSU kind of realized, oh, I do that. I think I do that. I'm going to try not to. And he has been trying to kind of, look at his behaviors in meetings and see if he could see it differently. So Laura, Patrice, Tanya, and Nori, who's having a connection issue, had some things to say about that. Laura, did you want to start? You were one of the ones who retweeted that first, I believe.
Yeah, I think it was interesting to see just both physically what they do and not only responding, but like giving head nods. And it was funny that that came up because something similar happens. I actually have my supervisor at University of North Texas, where I'm a lecturer, is a female. She's the chair of the department, just recently appointed. And we have factions, as many colleges do and universities and units do, but we have some factions that really seem to say inappropriate things to my chair. because she's a woman, and they never did that when a male colleague was. And I've been in this department as a student and a faculty member for the last 7 years, and it's never the same animosity or the kind of tone or the language. Like, they think it's okay to like cut someone down publicly instead of taking them aside privately, and that's not okay. So I chirp in, as I do every now and then. I stuck up and said, actually, what my chair is saying about this is this, so let's not jump on her for this issue. It was actually the provost or president's decision, and let's not play the blame game. And she just gave me like a little wink and a thanks, Laura, I got your back. And it's nothing that was verbally said, but we always have these visual cues between a few of us in the room, because there is less women in my area. She's in computer science and is a Regents faculty member. She's been in computer science since the 60s, so she's had this uphill kind of challenge, but she appreciates when other people in the room recognize her. And it's not just other women, it's other men that do that too. So I think that's really what we need to be thinking of.
And as our resident Canadian, you tweeted an interesting article earlier from Justin Trudeau where he mentioned, you know, kind of some of these things like, I'll still never know what it's like to be a woman. People talk about how dreamy he is. I'm guilty of that from time to time.
Yeah, Adeline Coe shared that, and it was right. He goes, people whistle at me, and he goes, he gets kind of he is good looking, he is dreamy, but he also does other things. So he's like, I'm ignoring that. I have thick skin, but think about the women who don't and can't in business and politics, and I will never know that. I'm a man, and discrimination looks different. So Aziz Ansari has a good act. Like, you never see women whipping out their, you know what, their junk on the street, like, hey there, guys, look at me. And so it's always going to be different. And I just saw that last night. It made me think of, I was like, you're right. You'll never hear the same sort of discrimination or little sideways banter that you will towards women.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's so foreign to me to think about. If I saw Justin Trudeau, I'd probably try to hide behind one of you, but that would be the first instance. I would never think, oh, I'm going to whistle. You know, I don't know. That's interesting. Patrice, you had a couple of things that you tweeted in response to that too, including one this morning. Did you want to talk about those a little bit?
Sure, as soon as I unmute myself. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we've all experienced it in meetings, and hearing it from women who are in Obama's cabinet, I think just, you know, demonstrates it doesn't matter how high up you are, you're still face those same battles. And that was a realization for me in talking to, I participated in a tech savvy event to try and engage women in STEM a few months ago. And some of these just, you know, internationally famous female faculty who have, you know, a bazillion publications and are, you know, top researchers in their field, made that comment that they will say something at a meeting and be talked over. And I was like, wow, like, you know, like if even they are talked over. And I think that sharing, though, is really important. And like your point about, was it your director who is now more aware of it? I think, you know, by sharing with other women that we're all facing this and helping them and supporting them, but also talking about it so people are aware of it, because there isn't always more than one of us, more than one woman at a meeting. And so you can't always, you know, help out that woman at the meeting. And so I think awareness is a big thing. And I think we're very lucky. You know, one of the articles that I was reading talked about how, you know, it's a subject that we had talked about recently where, you know, if women brag or something, you know, or speak up, you know, they're bitches and that kind of thing. And so how it's important to boast for your, you know, your fellow colleagues. And I see us doing that for each other, and I'm appreciative of it. I think each of us has put something on Twitter about how, you know, the awesomeness of all of us. And I think that's a really great thing. And that, you know, we really need to do more of that. And I always try to give credit, you know, like if somebody, another woman or man has an idea or something, you know, like they said, you know, to bring it back to them and give them credit. And I guess just the last thing that I've been thinking about, and we talked a little bit at our planning meeting, was, you know, the next generation and how can we help them amplify their voice now, so they're not faced with these same situations, and help them start, boosting for one another.
I apologize. You're hearing my dog freak out right now because she's really scared of the ice maker in my refrigerator. So we're working on that. I'd like to come back to the kind of mentoring and helping younger women soon. Nori, you had a couple of points in our planning meeting too. And I am now doing the visual thing on the bottom. Nori, what did you want to share?
I think we talked a lot about just that, pointing things out that are positive. I know what Patrice, you were just talking about, there's times where you're not there. And I've worked in places where I've known that things came up that were related to me, and that somebody in that room who was a good friend didn't stand up for something. And there's something really significant about that. Like, you want to forgive them because everybody has some sort of fear of retribution, for standing up when somebody may be, in trouble or something. But I like the idea of, let's promote that amongst ourselves. Be the person that actually says, no, I'd actually like to qualify that, or I'd like to add more information here, or just standing up for people in general.
I'd like to bring that up again in the strategies time also, because I have a feeling that I'm one of those who may be guilty of that, but I'm never certain as to whether that person would find it appropriate for me to say something, because I've been in positions where I did say something and the person was like, "Whoa, what are you doing?"
Yeah,
so,
that's a good point.
Think about that for the future, because I tend to agree with you. So I'd love to talk about some of the ways we could get at that effectively, and how to kind of prepare each other for that. Tanya, how about you?
What I think is interesting is that, we, all of us, because I don't think this issue is just like men not hearing us, or, women. I think lots of people just don't hear women's voices. And I think historically we are socialized to listen to and to hear certain voices, certain privileged voices, whether that is to hear a man's voice, or a certain race, or a certain socioeconomic status or intellectual status. Working in institutions, a lot of times in certain meetings, it's like we're only hearing, those with a chancellor in their name, or those with a faculty in their name. So I think, our society sort of socializes us to prioritize certain voices over others. I think our institutions and the culture of our institutions, every institution, I believe, is different. I don't think all higher educational institutions are the same, but I think each one has its own culture that prioritizes certain voices over others. So, I've had two really frustrating experiences that come to mind, and it's really interesting. The first one is, I have sat in executive level meetings beyond my institution, and made a statement or a claim about something. It was very funny. Nobody responded it. Nobody confirmed it. Nobody agreed with it. And then they turned to a man and said, "Well, what do you think about it?" And he pretty much said the exact same thing. He did not give me attribution. And then everyone was like, "Well, that's a great idea." And all of a sudden it was his idea. And then we moved forward with it. And I just was sitting there like, wow, did this just happen? And the women in the room did not, nobody in the room, women nor men, brought it back as that was just what Tanya said, or these sorts of things. Because I think, sometimes I know in my system and others, that's sort of just the culture of that, system, and that's how it works. So I think that was one thing that I had that happen, and I know lots of you have had similar things happen. Just a side note, I was on a panel today for NMC, and one of my researchers joined in. She's fairly new. She does a lot of the sort of other sorts of research and projects. She's not really out in the front nationally, and she's like, wow, what a boys club. It was me and 3 older white men on this panel, and I make jokes, you guys know this, about being the token woman. You know, I'm usually younger, and I am the only woman on lots of these panels. In the beginning, I felt like, why am I even here? You know, in some of the early panels that I was put on, I just felt like I was not qualified and so forth. I think at a minimum, I bring a different perspective a lot of times because I do have different experiences, but it's just very interesting at how many people might not listen to me because I am the female voice on the panel or the younger voice or so forth. Just the one other thing I want to mention in line with what Laura had mentioned with her chair is, you know, I've been in a director's position, I guess, for over 6 years now officially. I've been leading different initiatives before that, but it was very interesting. There were male directors before me, and if they had a directive, nobody really questioned it. It was like, okay, this is what we're doing. Maybe there were private conversations later or so forth. I felt when I became director, specifically my directives, a lot of times were questioned. And it was very interesting because they were actually tended to be questioned by women who were around my age or older than me. Very upfront questions and almost a resistance. And I thought that was really interesting because every time a man had a directive about anything, the culture was, we just accept what the man is saying. Even 5 years from now, if I find myself in a very displaced, you know, position because of that. But it's very interesting in how we openly will question directives from our female leaders. So anyways, that's all I had.
Your talk about voice actually made me think of, it was an old NPR, actually they interviewed like Terry Gross and other kind of commenters, speakers who did coaching, and there's a bit, and I tweeted a couple links out, but one of them was exactly what you talked about, and this is people in the industry that's voice specific, is your voice is too high, you sound like a child, is that a question you're asking or you're talking? And then your voice is too low, and it's only directed typically to reporters and journalists and podcasts and radio hosts that have a certain voice. And are we putting this on there? So are we making judgments on younger voices, female voices, and what does that mean? Like if it has to be a certain way to be authoritative or kind of interpreted. And that happens at our campuses, and exactly what you said is it doesn't happen with a male per se, unless they have an effeminate voice. Like, and this is stereotyping again. People have said this, so it's really shitty. I don't agree with it, but I've seen that behavior, and it maybe hasn't been overtly said to someone, but you could see passive aggressiveness. You could see snide little comments. You could see redirects, and it's really shitty to see that, because it doesn't mean they don't have less value in what they're saying or ideas or actually great opinions on where they should go take the group next. They're just not valued the same.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this, you know, the discussion around voice makes me think of authentic voice, and that a lot of times women have trouble speaking their authentic voice. And in thinking about it, I wonder if maybe that might be why sometimes we're not heard, because a lot of times they say, you know, you're not heard at a meeting because of your body language or you're being quiet. And maybe whether we realize it or not, we're kind of covering our authentic voice, which maybe makes us a little bit less passionate or emotional or something. And that we're, you know, but because of the way people perceive women and perceive our ideas and a lot of the things that we're saying, where women's ideas are questioned, that we're really afraid to just speak the way that it comes naturally with us, because all of us have all these things going on in our heads, right? Like, oh, if I speak too loud, I'm a bitch. If I speak too, you know, kind, I won't be taken care of. I'll be, you know, seen as too caring. And it makes me think of like golfing, where, you know, you're so busy trying to think about all the little intricacies of what you're doing that it makes it hard to just, you know, effectively get your point across.
Well, and the people who tend to process more. So I walk the line between blurting out whatever's in my mouth with my somewhat nasal, childlike voice or whatever, which I've also been dinged for. But yeah, like if you're a person in a meeting who processes things and wants to think about them and come back. So if you think about the DISC assessment, maybe you're a C, right? What that means is that either you're ignored or people aren't sure why you're there, or when you do come back with an idea, they're not necessarily ready to listen to you. And so that's one of the things I'd like to talk about, strategies next. If we wanted to kind of wrap up with the last pieces we wanted to say in regard to the readings we did this week, we could move on to, if it's okay, I'd like to just kind of switch the order a little bit and talk about first strategies for younger women that we can help, maybe mentor in some way, or then after that, I'd like to move on to the whole strategies for everyone, because the younger women thing has come up a couple of times tonight. Any closing thoughts? No? Okay, so Tanya, I believe, and this point I'm not attributing, I just don't remember who said it first, brought up the whole idea of how do we mentor these new to the field women. Tanya, you mentioned you had a relatively new researcher, for example, and that maybe people weren't listening to her. You had mentioned being in the room and being one of the younger, less senior, or at least perceived as less senior. So what are some of the strategies that we can think about that we could offer them to maybe help them be heard, aside from just repeating what they say?
I think one of the things that we need to do is we need to make sure to talk about these issues within our units, with our teams, because a lot of times, for years, this is sort of like, the dark side of organizations, and that we don't want to talk about what's happening. So it's great to have the women camaraderie and talk about these things, but I think these are open issues that we need to talk about. And making sure that we recognize not just women's voices, but diverse voices, because we're all going to be better organizations if we do it. So I make sure to talk with my team about these issues, not only on our campus, but nationally. I'm very open with them. And just one tip that I've always had and talked about is modeling. So I try to go in, and I'm at a stage in my career where I think I'm pretty confident about all of the things that I probably wasn't confident about 10 years ago. But I share my authentic voice, and yes, it's passionate, and that's a good thing. And sometimes, you could call it emotional or not, but this is who I am. I'm going to share my opinions. I'm not always going to use weak language. We call it in communication. There's a whole strain of scholarship around women and the language they use. Like, I think, I believe, these sorts of things, instead of saying like, hey, this is just the way it is. But I have to go out there and I have to get my voice heard. And, and it's not just about me, it's about, because other women are going to see this and model this behavior. But I think my work is really important. I'm trying to increase access for underrepresented students to quality higher education. And yeah, I'm passionate about that. I'm a first generation college student, low income, and so this is important to me. And so it's taken me a long time to come to this point in my career. But I think as women, we need to remember that there's other people watching us. And so we're not only doing it for ourselves, we're doing it for our field.
Can you talk just briefly about how you came to that confidence? I think I'm still really walking that line between like, yeah, and I think I go back and forth. So you're one of the people I look to, like when I'm in a meeting, I think, what would Tanya say? And then I say it. And sometimes it's scary and sometimes it's not. But how did you find that confidence for yourself early in your career, even now when you find yourself in that situation?
Even when I was this is way back now, I guess, 18 years or so, working on my graduate degree. Again, we've talked about imposter syndrome. And not only that, I grew up very lower socioeconomic, and I just never felt like I belonged in grad school, and even beyond that in the profession, I didn't ever know if my ideas were valid or not. So in grad school, a lot, I use things like, well, I think, or I might have this wrong, but this is what I'm thinking. And it only was with time, honestly. I've been at UWM for 12 years now and those sorts of things, but it just took time. As you all know, I'm very much a scholar of all of the areas that I talk about and the things that I do, and keeping up with quote unquote national trends, but also the academic side of it. And so, there comes a point that you start realizing and accepting the fact that, because you go through and you think everyone's smarter than you. And everyone has it figured out, and everyone's, sort of better than you. That's sort of what I kept thinking. And now I start realizing, you know, after all these years, like, no, I've got some really great ideas here, and they're very well developed arguments, and I'm really confident about them as a scholar and as a practitioner, you know. And so, and I think at some point, you know, I don't really have a lot to lose. You know, I'm not here for the paycheck, or the job, or those sorts of things, the benefits and all that, but I'm really here for a purpose. And so I think that's, you know, it's just been a lot of time. You know, this is from a girl who has, you know, communication anxiety, who couldn't even teach a class because I was so nervous to go in front of a class and teach. I never spoke up in class as an undergrad. And, you know, and it just took time. And I'm sure the timetable is different for everybody when you get there. And you start feeling like, I really know this. I know every aspect of it, and I've been in it for a long time. So at the same point, I'm still humble, and I know I don't know everything, but I know what I know. That's the good thing. I don't know everything, but I know what I know.
Lori, you just retweeted a really interesting link about how to run meetings that are fair to introverts, women, and remote workers. Did you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's something I actually share with my, I teach an instructional facilitation design class, like how do you facilitate good things in their meetings or teaching or workshops. And I really think we could just design our meetings better. So one of them was pre-meeting work and having time that people could catch up. And I'm known to do this. And the one article is a Harvard Business Review says that women often don't. They just show up on time, they leave at the end of the agenda. Where other male counterparts in this research actually would show up, have a chit chat with people, do a quick follow-up, and it's just perceived differently. And the other idea is maybe thinking about designing agendas or pre-work in advance, because people, whether they're going to be distant or remote, or they're going to be introverted, or they're going to be of different status or levels, they always won't want to participate. And there's just loudmouths like me that are extroverted, and I'm okay with just coming off and saying things, but I have to be cognizant of everyone in the room can't always respond like that. So we need to have some preparation, and also ways they can contribute, even if it's beyond a meeting. So if there's input. So our group does example, we have a wiki for our team under department. We have someone taking notes, and then we have kind of a follow-up comments or added comments that maybe didn't make the agenda or didn't get talked about, or something to think about. And then we vote later. So we actually just have discussion points, and we're not going to make a decision, but we're just going to discuss and mull over it till our next meeting, because some people need that. I don't, but I think many other people do. And so I think it's been good to see my chair and my new dean think on it and say, let's not rush to make a decision on this, or let's give you some informed information before, or homework before, and then, yeah, and then we can have a better balanced meeting, because not everyone's voice is heard or feels comfortable. And also maybe they don't want to participate, but they need to chew on it or think about it a little bit longer.
Nori, I think you've talked about that too. Patrice, did you want to go first? But I also know that Nori has brought kind of this sort of thing up also.
I was going to say that what Laura was saying reminded me of a discussion I was just having with a physics faculty member at Cornell. And she was saying how when they gave students the same amount of time to take a test, you know, women and men, the women did worse than the men. But when they gave them longer, that the women actually did better than the men. And, you know, I was thinking about that in relation to what Laura just said, and, you know, some of the research that I've seen on distance learning, and that, you know, sometimes maybe part of it is that, you know, women just need longer, or some women need longer to, you know, reflect and think about what they're saying and kind of gather their thoughts. And to what Tanya was saying, you know, feel like, okay, I've built a good argument in my mind. I feel confident about this. I know I have the evidence, and now I'm ready to communicate what I want, you know, what I want to say. And I think women just need, you know, men maybe are more likely to just say what's on their mind, where women need to take that time to, you know, to build their confidence, feel like they do, you know, they do have a strong argument. And and I was just going to say, you know, in thinking about meetings, like it would be interesting. I mean, we use Slack, I don't know, whatever you want to use. If, you know, you had kind of a pre-meeting discussion before you had the actual meeting, and that might give people time to talk about it, and a woman to really share her ideas before the meeting, so that when they get to the meeting, they're more likely to have built their argument and speak up and be heard.
Nori, I know you've been having some internet connectivity issues. Just to catch you up, we're talking about some advice that we could share with, younger women. Tanya brought up a story about how she's been every once in a while feeling kind of marginalized by other women who were maybe in the field longer or things like that. What do you think we could offer to younger students or the students in our departments or others?
I'm totally. I think we've been talking about processing time, and that some people take longer to process. Those who take are at an advantage. Culture where your response, creating ways where you before people talk. Like you said, or even traditional, because I don't take time.
Nori, I think you're cutting out again. I'm not sure what I was trying to tweet about was that you were talking about that you're not sure you always take the time to talk or participate. So carving out that time in the meeting. If you could let me know on Twitter if that's correct, if I was hearing you right as you were cutting out. I don't know if it's your connection or mine, but you're frozen and look adorable in the video, so I'm going to go ahead and assume it's an internet connection. So don't worry, Nori, I'm on the TWC. I'm calling them right now for you. I'm on it. I've had to deal with them already this week. I got it. I got to cement boots. I'll be back. We've lost
frozen. At least she's frozen in a very attractive pose.
Yeah, how does that happen? I always look like I'm about to sneeze. Like,
I just want to mention, and when Nori gets back, I'll let her chime in. I just want to go back to a little bit. Patrice brought up something that just so rang with me. It's interesting as women, or for me, I should say, when I go in a meeting, I'm like, this is the argument that I am making. This is the data and the evidence, and I have citations, and I have universities, and I am going to really convince this group that this is what we need to be doing. And Patrice had brought up the fact that, and sometimes men just throw out their ideas, and so maybe we need to have the same scrutiny for ideas for all folks and all voices. I think sometimes I feel like I have to spend a lot of energy convincing people, no matter what my national or international credentials are, where I do see, other folks, predominantly men, that will just have an idea. There's no data or evidence to back it up. But they come with, we talk about this in organizational communication. They come with this authority, right? It's this legitimate authority because it's a male voice, and so we listen to it. This is the authority. And so I think it's another thing, as Jess was asking for tips that we need to be aware of. Listen to all voices, but make sure that we have the same scrutiny for all arguments, despite what voice it's coming from, feminine or masculine. Nori, you back? We see your pretty face.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yay.
I like the idea of process time.
So I think, Nori, you're a bit choppy here, but what she was telling us is that process time is good for those who need it. Back to our original conversation when Laura had brought up, how do we structure meetings? How do we encompass those who are maybe introverted and need more time to process? And so Nori had brought up that, yes, this is good for those who need it, and that it's not necessarily a gender thing. And that's very true. Obviously, we know Laura just said she's very extroverted. I'm very introverted, pretending to be extroverted a lot of the time. And so I'm one of those people, like, we can talk about something, but I need about 3 days to get back to you on it. One of the things we used to do with my team in meetings, is everybody used to put up sort of updates on their projects and those sorts of things ahead of time. People would have time to review these materials and documents so that our meetings weren't just status reports. And then they came to the meeting with actually things we needed to be face-to-face and discuss, or we needed to be synchronous and discuss. So I think that that way of, you know, we used to do it where everyone sat around a circle and just spewed out what they were doing for the last week or so. This allowed us to share out much more richer information and give people time to reflect.
We're doing a similar thing to that right now. So this week was our last staff meeting. And we've had staff meeting every week forever and ever. And every once in a while we'd get really fancy and we'd go around and share what we were doing, right? So one of the things we want to do is get into a room together, men, women, everyone, and share what we're doing and do that in a way that it's like, hey, you're really great at storytelling. I'm working on this project. Maybe you could help us. So it's proving to be more challenging. I'm super used to the staff meeting format. I really like
when you think about it, you're spending like 2 weeks of your year, 2 working weeks, right? Just sitting in meetings, listening to what people are doing. And it's like, send me a 1-page document and I can read what you're doing. And if I want to connect and talk about anything, I can. But for us to verbally,
we're moving to a weekly scrum. And then, I mean, I'm going to be honest.
Can you explain the scrum, Jess? I don't know if a lot of people know.
Scrum is an agile method. I can do some links in the document, but every Monday morning, we're going to spend a couple of hours planning with our teams. And then everyone in MSUAT and the MSU Hub, which, you know, come together in this Venn, whatever, we're all the same team. We're going to do a stand-up where we go around and we look at the boards that we've created and we talk about them and we share what was done and where we're going and where we could use more talent. So, you know, like if I were to develop something that had to have any semblance of looking like a grown-up made it, I would have to get some help from a graphic designer or you know, one of our more creative instructional designers, because it's to the point where my friend Nate Evans kind of vets every one of my PowerPoints that I ever do because it looks like just don't think about it. It's better. So this Scrum meeting is a way for us to share. Well, Laura, you've seen some of them. They're not great. They're terrible. So
no, that's not true.
If I throw those out there at that meeting, though, I can get the talents that I don't have. I don't have that talent. It's okay to say that, but other people do. So this meeting is a way to say, hey, I'm interested in that project. I can contribute this thing, as opposed to saying, I'm working on this, this, and this. So think about it as a shift toward I'm doing this, toward we are doing this. And, you know, I'm going to be honest.
Slack or like a Basecamp? Do you do any of that sort of thing as well?
We have Slack. Okay. We have Agile boards. They're paper-based. I can take some photos. Maybe that's a future episode. I'm not sure. But I'm a process nerd. This is what I get out of bed for every day. So what I have to be really honest with, though, is even after I became a manager, I would look at that staff meeting and go, okay, we got staff meeting. Are we going to have staff? Do we have anything to talk about? But what I really liked about it was everybody being in the room. So Nori, you talking about people needing process time, whether they're male, female, etc. I'm totally seeing that in my team. And this has been really helpful for me to try to figure out, you know, different ways to get at that. Yeah, that's really helpful. We are at 6:43 right now. And we haven't done a great job of taking notes in the document, but why don't we start the wrap-up conversation right now so we can move on to rants, roasts, and boasts. Does anyone have any
tweets? So tweets are my notes. Tweets are my notes. We have some great tweets.
We will storify these for you later. Laura is correct. See, that's another talent. She's great at social media. I just put pictures.
Is Nori back?
Nori, are you back?
Yeah.
Nori, move! Oh my gosh, she's back!
I love it.
I'm running my Ookla speed test right now.
What's your Ookla have to say?
Well, it says my my download is 39 megabits per second, which
you are so much better. You're awesome. You're so great than you were before. You were so choppy.
Yeah,
awesome.
So please tell us the things you were trying to tell us earlier that we were all, I think, semi-drunkenly trying to retweet on your behalf.
Right. You captured it. Mostly what I really wanted to hit on the female leadership and it's something we've all talked about recently as we're preparing to go present at places. I think we identified that we need to think more about our facilitation together so that what we present is more cohesive. I think female leaders need to think really clearly about all the ways that they facilitate and create spaces for conversations, and build in this kind of process time that we're talking about. Build in communication devices in a way that you're not only modeling just good leadership, but you're also making the space for all the different types of voices.
And Nori, you're one of the people I look to for, I guess you'd call it emotional intelligence, where I'm like, oh my God, I'm feeling so empathetic. I don't know what to do. What advice would you offer to a woman who is maybe new to the field, or would you offer to us who are working with women who are new to the field? What would you recommend they do to help make their voices heard, that we do to help make their voices heard, etc.?
I would say to stay on message and, read a lot, research your topic, know what you're talking about, and learn how to clearly state your opinions and stick with them. Be ready to listen and take advice from other people, but just be really smart about your field, because you can control that. And then you can work on your voice as you develop over time.
I love that you say frequently, you're always learning, but what you're good at, you're really good at. And that's true. That's one of my things I'm aiming for. Did anyone have anything at 6:46? I don't mean to sound like I'm reading the clock, but trying to keep us on track.
I just wanted to say, I think Jess and Nora, you've hit on a really good point. Everybody should know their shit, right? But I think it's a really big thing. You got to know what you're talking about. If you want to build that confidence, I feel like this was a public speaking class that I taught 16 years ago, but it's you got to know what you're talking about. You choose topics that you know what you're talking about. And, obviously I don't view this as this is my job, this is my career, this is my life, and a part that I'm very passionate about this. But I know my stuff. I know I'm a bit of a nerd, but I'm reading Why They Went to College from 1940, whatever, from Pace. I have the Stylistic of Language from 1960 sitting on my nightstand right now. And so I think that, you choose a profession because it's something, I hope, that you're really interested in. And so I love reading research. And it's very interesting when somebody wants to argue with me about engagement. And I'm like, do you know that the first article in the 1920s is where engagement spawned? Take your time to really read back for a few decades, at least 50 years, on the topics that interest you, so that you know what you're talking about. And I feel that has given me the confidence. There's, and the things I'm passionate about and that I've read about, I don't think that there's, very few people that I've met that can argue with me on those topics, and that gives me the confidence.
I'm sorry, I'm about to sell my dogs. I think Rio just interrupted you. They're free. If you would like two adorable pictures.
No, we love the dogs. It's fine.
I do want to take a minute to point out something that Callie Morrison said on Twitter earlier, and we've been talking about, but that, she tends to use the language, I am notorious for IMHO, or in my opinion, politician speak. So just to wrap up before roast and boast, what do you guys think about that? I say, I think this, I think that. Do you think that's weak language? What kinds of things? She said she started doing it as a defense mechanism. And so, what do you find yourself using those kinds of languages, and how did you?
Can I jump in really quick and then I'll turn it over to you guys? First of all, there's a whole strain of research on gender differences in language use. So this is a thing. It's researched and proven. And if anybody's interested, I could pull some of the research on it. So from an early age, I was taught in grad school and maybe even in upper undergrad to use strong masculine language. It exerts confidence in these sorts of things. But then all of a sudden when I got into my profession, I found people were really intimidated by that. Maybe I came off as the bitch, these sorts of things. Maybe the organizational culture was a little bit more accommodating. So I found myself a lot of times reverting back to those. A lot of times, even when I do panels like today, I will be funny, maybe a little giggly, maybe make jokes, maybe use a little language that's off kilter, because it makes people a little less scared of a really intelligent woman with strong language. So, you know, a lot of times it's just making me a little bit more approachable by throwing out some flaws there. But don't get it confused, folks.
And that's what I do too. Like, I use that as a, hey, look, I'm approachable, bloop, bloop, bloop. But then I will flat out tell you, I'm kind of a dick. So, you know, if I'm coming on too strong and scaring you, you need to tell me. I'm trusting you to tell me when you're telling, you know.
Or maybe, hey, you are coming off that way because I know what I'm talking about. And if you would just listen, then this is what it is. Instead of being intimidated. Darn it.
I like it. I like it. Laura, you unmuted yourself. What do you have to say?
Oh, no, nothing. I was just going to say it's a bit about confidence in place and experience. I think that comes with it. And it may not be like age experience, but experience in a field, or some people have changed professions. So I have a good colleague that's actually a notorious doctor, and she's awesome. And she sometimes kind of questions herself. And I said, dude, you were like a real doctor, and then you got a second, you're an MD, then you got a PhD, and like, you're the bomb, girl. So don't question what anyone's thinking about you always. You're just rocking it. And I think it's a self thing as well. I've never had that issue. I thank my father and my mother for that, because I think it's really how we, and I think about as we raise generations, whether they're your own kids, the kids you adopt, or the kids that want to adopt you, we have to think about empowering how they present themselves and how they see themselves. And it's not just like you're great and awesome. It's you got to get some grit, kid, and not everything's going to be great. So this is the shit the world's going to give you. How are you going to deal with it? And so I think we need to have some of those conversations with people, and that's okay.
Shout out to Mike and Colleen. That was great. I like that. And then, I had something else to say, and I totally forgot what it was. So, Patrice, I saw that you were unmuted too. What can we do for you?
Well, I was just going to actually do a roast. The first roast is today is my dad's birthday. So I'd like to say happy 82nd birthday to my dad, and thank him for being a role model and helping me to be where I am today. And a shout out to Jess for doing what I thought was an awesome job facilitating tonight. I really loved the way you facilitated the show and made sure to bring everybody in and Twitter.
Fantastic job.
Awesome job.
Oh, stop. That makes my roast sound really dumb, because my roast is in the document, and it's that this canned wine tastes like fart smell. It's terrible. So I love that you guys are all like, woo.
I thought that was your rant.
Oh, well, no, that's my roast.
Oh.
I mean, I'm still going to drink it, but it's pretty awful. World Market, Lila Pinot Grigio in a can. Not
Put
good.
some Sprite in it with a lime. You'll be fine.
Mentorship.
Exactly.
Right there. Who else has a roast, boast, or toast?
I have, it's slightly, I was thinking today, like I wanted to talk about ways to elevate women. And so I have a shout out to my friend Donna Redman. You've all met her. She's a professor at the University of Laverne. And maybe 18 months ago, she gave me some financial advice to help me get out of some credit card debt that was I just didn't have a lot of cash. And, you know, every time I got paid, it already had to go somewhere. And she gave me this phenomenal advice. It's common, but I did what she did. And I have to thank her because I now have zeroed out all my credit cards. And it's phenomenal. I mean, it feels really awesome. And she empowered me to do that. And it is significant how, you know, how your confidence is tied to your ability, the freedom that to not be broke. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was amazing. And I've been walking around feeling like, because I cleared out my credit card debt. So there, I passed that along. And what I did is I picked one credit card, threw all my money on it till it was gone. The next one, the next one, the next one.
That's awesome. I also like that when you were saying that, I read lips because I'm half deaf. And you said, I'm so awesome, but it cut out at that very moment. So it looked like we bleeped you. So anyone on Twitter who wants to say what Nori may have said at that time that wasn't really, it's so awesome, hit us, hashtag 3WEDU. I want to give a shout out to Tanya, you know, as Nori just talked about her friend kind of teaching her about financial pieces. Tanya is the person I look to for, I am smart and I'm going to tell you, like, and I'm saying that not as an ego thing, but like she has taught me so much about owning what I do and owning that I'm good at things. Laura is one of the first people to call me out and say, no, just stop. You're awesome, stop, selling it short. But these women here, my call out is like, thank you for teaching me how to own that. If you had asked me 2 years ago if I'd be on a podcast like this one, I'd been like, no, So they've really empowered me to think in different ways and helped me amplify and elevate my stuff. So, Tanya?
Yes, I mean, you've done amazing stuff over the last several years. So, you are just phenomenal. And at the projection that you are, it'll be really exciting to be with you for the next 5 years of your career or longer. I'm trying to buy a house in Costa Rica and retire.
Yeah, you're going to get us waitressing jobs. We're going to be great. You're my retirement plan. I got no kids.
No, we're not doing waitressing. We're doing wine tours. Tours in Costa Rica.
Whatever. I just want to own my retirement. So
let's talk vineyard. Let's think bigger dreams, people.
I'll be there for that.
Okay. I'm taking Spanish lessons. It's cool. We got this.
Muy bien.
I have one more toast. I, like a few of you, listen to the OSU Research and Action podcast. I just want to give a shout out to Patsy Moscow. She works with the great folks at UCF, and she did an excellent podcast on researching distributed learning teaching effectiveness. And I know that she's an amazing person. She works with Chuck Zubin, and they do some great things in their shop of two. But just listening to that podcast and hearing her talk about how she stays productive, how she says no to new projects, how she shares and works with experiences, just kind of refocused me when I listened to her on my walk this morning. I listened to a podcast when I walk, Little Jack, and she reminded me of ideas for how you think about your kind of research agenda. And I just thought I'd say, really, thanks for sharing yourself on that podcast with Katie Linder. If you haven't checked it out,
link in our shared doc. I want to hear that.
Yeah, I did. I put it at the bottom, and I'll tweet it out.
Thanks for sharing, Laura. Patsy is amazing. You're right. And she really is, as we've talked about on this show, does a magnificent job in uplifting women within the Online Learning Consortium organization, within the research that she does. So, hopefully one day we could have her on the show. That would be great. That'd
be so fun. And along those lines, this isn't a gendered thing. Like, I have noticed that Patsy is so wonderful. Karen Vignari has been wonderful at helping me kind of figure some stuff out. But Chuck Zubin, my goodness, he was on a steering committee with me and I had some questions for him. And he's like, oh, so you're just starting out. And he just gave me all this advice, sent me a copy of his book, told me to email him if I had any questions. Dave Goodrich, who's on my team at MSU, I sent him to a conference just to see Chuck talk. And sure enough, he was texting me the whole time, like, this guy is so cool. He's so great. He's giving me so much good advice. So gendered, not gendered, those people who lift you up, Chuck Zubin has been one of them, honestly.
And he's such a feminist. He talks about his wife and his daughter and different things that they do. And so I remember the first time I went to see Chuck speak, and my boss was like, yeah, just go talk to him. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was so nervous, palms sweaty. And I walk up there like, hi, I'm Tanya. I work with Bob. And he just stopped and he looked at me and engaged me and now it's still crazy when we sit down to dinner together and hang out that I'm like, oh my God, he is magnificent. The work that him and Patsy have done together is just really great. So two really great people to get to know.
I have one more mail. Well, I have two more mails to call. I mentioned earlier Brendan Gunther, who jumped right into our conversation, was like, oh crap, I need to reevaluate how I do that. Oh, Brendan, so he was pretty great at that, jumping right into that conversation and offering to see what he could do or how he could, reevaluate his work. And then Jeff Grable, who's the Associate Director of Teaching and Learning at MSU, Teaching and Learning with Technology, kind of the head of the hub that is new on our campus. We were in a meeting and I was presenting a process and somebody in the meeting just kept asking, well, what are you going to do about this and how are you going to define that? I'm like, this meeting is only really just to get the idea out there. And the questions kept coming and I kind of jumped on that person, Tanya style. She'd have been so proud of me. It was like a verbal flying elbow. And then after it, I felt bad. And I said to Jeff, I said, oh gosh, I have to go apologize because that wasn't cool. And he looked at me and he said, no, you don't. You knew what you were doing. And I kind of stopped and looked at him and I said, you're right. I did know what I was doing. Like, it had never occurred to me. Yeah, I did that for a reason. So that was really helpful to hear. That was very empowering and very cool. So I just wanted to toast that guy too. Any others? We're at 6:59. I just want to say we'll see a few of you. WCET's heading, 3WDU is heading into WCET in Minneapolis. So we'll see a few of you for our session. We are presenting on October the 13th in the afternoon, quick happy hour, and then to Prince tribute. So perhaps see you there. And then our next podcast is October 19th, Wednesday. We're coming back. We'll bring our best expression of herself and fashion back because we need to talk about that, clearly. We need to get
We're
back to that.
debriefing WCET too, right?
Talking about, we'll talk about our
Awesome.
in mini.
Cheers to you, ladies. I love you.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.